Hi everyone, Dr. Frunkey back with another knife review video. You might have noticed a trend on my channel. There are a lot of Spydercos. Spyderco makes a good product, and I definitely have enjoyed owning quite a few of them. On the table today, we've got the Native 5 in S110V steel, the lightweight model. This is a knife that's special to me for a couple of reasons. The first one was that I bought this knife for a girlfriend. I bought the pink model. I had had a few Spydercos in the past, and I knew that they made a good knife, but I had never used or held a Native 5, so I bought the pink one. And I was so impressed with it that I wanted to pick up a Native 5 for myself. Now luckily, I was traveling to Denver to meet a friend of mine, and we happened to go to the Golden, Colorado Spyderco factory. It was there that I got to check out all the knives that they had available at the time. I got to handle a bunch of knives that I never would have bought or held otherwise. It was a really nice experience. The guys in there were super nice. I didn't get to meet Sal or Eric, unfortunately, but that may come someday. But what I found was that the Native 5 was a really high quality item, even in the grand spectrum of everything that Spyderco makes. So I bought this exact knife from the Spyderco factory in Golden, Colorado, and it has been nothing but perfect. To be completely honest, I no longer own this knife. I sold this to my good friend B House, who let me borrow this and the red carbon fiber domino for review. I owned both of those knives and sold them to him. He's also an avid Spyderco enthusiast, and I thank him for letting me use this. The Native 5 has been around for a little while now, a couple of years since it turned into the Native 5. The base model is available still in a S30V steel. It comes in either black or plain a blade. It also has a plain edge or serrations available. They have done some special editions. They've done a titanium one. They've done in 2015, Spyderco had a forum knife that was an S90V. But then they announced late in 2015 that they were going to be revising most of their lineup to have this S110V steel. And one of the first knives to get that steel, as is usual, their Native series got that. It started out with this lightweight model. They have since released a more standard G10 Native 5 in S110V. But when I got this knife, my first impressions were excellent. As with most Spyderco knives, right away you can feel the quality. You can feel the fit, the finish, and the expertise that went into making one of their knives. Now, unlike my domino or my paramilitary, this handle is just plastic. Now, they call this fiberglass reinforced nylon, but I was worried that this might be a step in the wrong direction in terms of my collection in buying a plastic-handled knife, where I had before carbon fiber, titanium, some excellent materials in the handles of my knives. I was worried that this wouldn't be as strong or wouldn't be as nice, but what ended up happening was the strength is there, and the lightness that you get from having an FRN handle allows this to be a very, very comfortable knife to carry. Now I see why everyone loves things like the Delica or the Endura. They must be very light. I've never had those knives. I've held them. I've never owned them or carried them extensively. But I see why everyone loves those lightweight knives. This is very easy to pocket. After recognizing the quality, even though it was made out of plastic, I turned my attention to the different components of the knife. So the selling point of this particular knife is the S110V blade. S110V is a powdered metallurgy steel that's available from Crucible Powdered Metallurgy. It is an American-made steel, and it has a very high content of vanadium, hence the V at the end of that. This allows it to achieve high hardness. It also has a high carbon and a high chromium content, so it's very stainless, and it's a very hard steel. S110V also has a very good element of toughness. And a lot of people out there, people who are more experienced than I in sharpening, say that S110V holds an edge just as well as and sharpens far better than S90V, which doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of the numbering system, but I'll leave it to their judgment to make that assessment. So Spyderco has introduced this S110V on a lot of their models, the Mannix, the Paramilitary 2, the regular military, and maybe some more in the future. As far as I can tell, it's a great steel. It holds an excellent edge, it takes an excellent edge, and it does not rust. I owned this knife for about 3 or 4 months, and I carried it multiple times a week. I don't ever have a large number of knives in my collection. They tend to stay very focused. Knives tend to come in and out, and I use them while I own them, and then I move on to the next one. This knife functioned beautifully as an everyday carry knife. So many times when I wanted to carry a bigger, fancier, cooler looking knife, you know, I would still reach for the Spyderco, because sometimes carrying around 6 ounces of titanium and brass is not really the best option for the day. Sometimes you're not wearing clothes that really accommodate that. Sometimes it's just you don't want to carry it. So this was a go-to for me. This, very much like the Domino, is a very functional EDC knife. If you haven't seen my review on the Domino or the 0392 ZT, they're on my channel. Check those out. Both of them are great knives, but just different. Different for different reasons. So the blade itself, aside from being S110V, is a standard Spyderco leaf shape, but this, unlike the Domino, which you just saw, has a very nice thick top to it here, and the blade stays relatively thick throughout. It's actually thicker than the Domino, and it stays thicker throughout the entirety of its flat grind. It has this nice swedge up top that allows it to have a somewhat slimmer profile in that regard, and brings it down to an ultra fine tip that pierces very, very well. It is the full flat machine satin grind that so many nice Spydercos have. There were some very minor imperfections in the milling lines on my particular knife. I don't really complain about that too much. This knife was a little bit less expensive than, say, the Domino, so there are some areas that I can forgive. I'm just a little bit obsessive compulsive, but I think that the overall work on the blade is nice. It was very sharp out of the factory. I had a friend of mine borrow the knife and apply a 17 degrees per side wicked edge. I think we were both curious about S110V at the time. He wanted to try it on the wicked edge, and I said, hey, I've got this little Native. I'd like to take it into the hyper cutting category. Now this edge, I joke about it, will cut a hole in the space-time continuum. It is a fantastic edge, and it is amazingly sharp, and it has stayed that way ever since it was put on there. That S110V steel is amazing. So moving back on the blade a little bit, we have what I like on a Spyderco knife, and that is the forward finger choil on the blade. It's got a nice amount of jimping on the inside there and on the thumb ramp up here. Allows for a very secure grip. Again, Spyderco taking into serious consideration the ergonomics of their knives. For a guy like me with a large hand, not really getting my pinky all the way around anything down here in the standard grip, but because I can choke up on this knife, my big hand can hold this little knife and feel confident and do a nice powerful cut even with that small edge. Now, speaking of the edge, it's about a 3-inch blade, about 2 3/4 on the cutting edge there. But again, for most EDC cutting tasks, that's perfectly adequate. If you're not going to be making food with it, it's not that important. Again, get a kitchen knife for that. The pivot on these knives is really nothing to speak about. On these mid-back or lock-back knives, you're not going to have a rapid opening or rapid closing like on a flipper, so you don't really need ball bearings. This just runs on standard washers. But it's smooth enough. The action is not jerky. It opens very smoothly and cleanly. It closes very smoothly and cleanly with no real catches in places where you wouldn't expect them to be. Speaking of the lock back, that is the type of lock we've got going on here. The Spyderco line has plenty of lock back knives, and they do a very good job of it. This one, unlike the Delicas and Enduras, is a bit thicker. The blade stock is thicker, and so the lockback needs to be thicker, and as such, it is a bit stronger. It's a nice lockup, it's very secure, and it never feels like it's going to fail on you. I don't perform spine breaking tests or spine thwacking on this channel. That's just stupid, and this isn't my knife anymore, and I was specifically told not to test the spine strength on this, but it's completely unnecessary. This thing is about as strong as it gets. Honestly, this is probably a much stronger lock than even a titanium frame lock, and some videos online of, say, the cold steel triad lock and other lockback mechanisms might support that fact. But in any case, this is not going to be a knife that you are going to want to play with all the time. Now, the lockback is kind of fun in and of itself. It's sort of a different opening and closing mechanism, but in the grand spectrum of knives as sort of pocket jewelry or even a pocket toy, this one will not really fill that role. This one is far more functionally based. The lockup is super strong on purpose, so that is a functional knife rather than a plaything. Alright, let's talk about the handles. This one is done in the dark blue fiberglass reinforced nylon, or FRN. I was worried, like I said at first, that this would not be very strong material. I was wrong. Now, there is a little bit of flex that happens if you put a lot of stress on it in that direction. But in terms of the overall handle strength in this direction, there's no flex. And I like this sort of polydirectional grip texture that it's got on there. I didn't think I was going to like it at first, but once I saw it in person and held it in my hands, I understood why Sal and Eric talk about it so much and why they're a fan of it. It really does have some excellent grip without being too hot or uncomfortable. It is not a pillar construction or open construction, sort of as a function of that lockback. I do sort of wish they had maybe continued with a little bit of metal back here, or even left this open instead of doing this sort of pseudo backspacer in the plastic, but they did what they did, and you know, it is lightweight. The lockback itself, the hinge is pinned into the frame here. This screw goes through the rest of the frame and seals it from the back. Same story here, seals it from the back. I kind of wish that they had maybe gone with the reverse on this, where the screws were placed on the back and they left a clean front. We Knives did a great job with that on their 605. I've compared a couple of these smaller Spydercos to this knife just because this Chinese model is clearly taking a lot of cues from the great masters at Spyderco, but here they put the hardware on the back and it threads through to the front, and so there's nothing showing on the front. Now, whereas that knife is almost gimmicky in terms of its presentation, this knife is again purely functional. But I think that form and function can go together sometimes. Perhaps they could have done that on this knife to keep it uniform. Well, The pocket clip is a standard Spyderco pocket clip. Not a lot of aftermarket options available for this one, but it seems to function just fine. It leaves a good amount of the knife sticking out of the pocket, let's be honest. You get good grip on those three screws. As with any regular Spyderco clip, those 3 screws provide excellent traction for pulling it out of the pocket. And there is an included lanyard tube right there. I don't use lanyards, so all of that is wasted real estate to a guy like me. In conclusion, the Native 5 is an excellent everyday carry knife. It is solid, it is strong, and it's now available in the Hypersteel CPM S110V. If you haven't tried one, I would recommend getting one in your hands. I assure you that you will be surprised by the fit, finish, the solidity, and the quality of it. It is not a cheap knife. It is not a light-duty knife. You can use this thing to do as heavy a task as you can get a 2.75-inch blade to cut. And I'm a huge fan. It weighs in at something like 2.5 ounces, and it's very easy to carry. I would recommend looking into this and picking it up. If you're on the fence, try one of the S30V models for a little bit less money. This is Dr. Frunkey. I hope you enjoy these videos. I hope you can get some information out of it. I'm just trying to share some information with the knife community out there. Click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll try to make some more in the near future. Take care.